Hi, this is Tatsuya, and today I'm going to be presenting my research paper in 5 slides, and I'm going to be talking about how the public school system has been really great because the Supreme Courts and the federal courts have been really diligent in preventing religion from coming into the public schools. Now, going to the first slide, I really just want to talk about kind of my own perspective and then kind of dive into this presentation. But actually, I'm an evangelical Christian myself. I wasn't actually a Christian until I came into college, and it's really been interesting. My faith journey's been interesting, but also as a high schooler, I was actually into the New Age movement. Of course, during that time, I've noticed now that looking back from like where I am right now, I saw that my high school was actually violating the Establishment Clause because they were promoting meditation and New Age practices in some of their, even within the classroom setting. But as well as when I went to my academic counselor, she recommended it to me and to other students. So there was some clear, now looking back, there was some clearly some of the violation of the Establishment Clause. So that kind of, that's why I was really interested in researching prayer in public schools, because for me, growing up in California, I never saw that that public schools where Christians were violating the Establishment Clause by forcing prayer into public schools. Rather, I saw it the other way around, in which New Age people were trying to enforce meditation and prayer into the public school system. So that's kind of why I was really interested in researching this. But I just really want to start off with a quote by Ravi Zacharias. And he's a Christian apologist, and he's been investigating all sorts of religions and all sorts of worldviews. So he's of course he's a Christian, but of course in his pursuit of truth, he investigated and practiced many different types of religions. And I just want to read a quote from him. It says, "Anytime religion is politicized, it's in danger of extinction, and I think that's what really happened in Europe. When you have to pay taxes to support the church, you can be sure it's going to tax your intellects as well, and ultimately you will want to overthrow the whole yoke." So basically, as a Christian or as a follower of any religion, I think that it's best that religion does not become involved in politics, or religion shouldn't be spread through political means. Religion should be spread from an individual to an individual. I think the best way to, actually I've heard that the best way to proselytize, whether that's or evangelize, whether that's whether you're a New Ager, whether you're Hindu, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're from Islam, or whether you're from Judaism, or whether you're a Christian like me, the best way to spread religion is through personal relationships, is through individual means. So I just really want to quickly go over some of the Christian violations of the Establishment Clause. Now, the first case was, but the Supreme Court's always been consistent in keeping prayer or meditation out of the public school system. So I just want to go over the first Supreme Court case in which Christians tried to impose prayer into public schools, and that was in the case of Engel versus Vitale in 1962. And in this Supreme Court case, the public school systems wanted to enforce a prayer that stated, "Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon Thee, and we beg Thy blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. Amen." And so they tried to enforce this prayer into the schools. But groups of families representing the students attending the public schools in Hendricks Union Free School District, led by Stephen L. Engel, gathered together in attempts to sue the school board president named William J. Vitale Jr. So basically, the school board president, William J. Vitale, wanted to enforce this prayer, and basically the backlash came by this group led by Stephen L. Engel, and the families representing them. And all the families that were opposed to this prayer were actually religious themselves. Some were representing Jewish rabbinical organizations, the Universal Unitarian Church, and the ethnic culture movement. And the plaintiff for this case, who tried to help these groups of families to kick out the prayer in public schools, was Lawrence Roth. And he kind of said that he was atheist during while he was in his middle stages of his life, but ultimately he claimed that he was from a religious Jewish household, and he mentioned that he continued to pray occasionally. So basically the Supreme Court was, of course, consistent in saying no prayer in public schools. And in 1963, another same case happened, but this was more extreme. This was the court case of the School District of Abington versus Shemp in 1963. And in this case, basically the School District of Abington wanted students to read, or wanted a student to go on the loudspeaker and to present 10 verses of the Bible. And they also wanted the students to pray. So basically the school said that they were innocent because under Pennsylvania state law, they were mandated to make the students read 10 Holy Bible verses and to recite the Lord's Prayer or any sort of prayer every morning. And the person who was against this was Edward Shemp, who was a Unitarian Universalist. And basically on the federal level, this court case was lost, so Abington School District appealed to the Supreme Court, hoping that the Supreme Court might rule in favor of them. But the Supreme Court, of course, said that this was completely a violation of the Establishment Clause. Now, in both of these cases, the schools argued that if anybody didn't want to be a part of this prayer or didn't want to become involved with the Christian practices that they were promoting, they could get a parent signature, and then the students could be excused from the classroom while the rest of the classroom did their religious activity. But the Supreme Court said that school districts cannot be supporting any religion at all, whether even though the students can be excused. And sometimes in this case, some of the schools kind of lied about the Christian practices. Some of the schools tried to argue in these cases that they were promoting non-denominational prayers, but of course that didn't pass. And also, what I kind of think is strange is that one time, and I know lots of evangelical Christian scholars, or even some of my evangelical Christian friends might say this, is that since they removed public prayer from the schools, that now we're having society problems, that society is becoming immoral because we remove prayer out of public schools. Now, first of all, that's kind of untrue, because like I come from Japan, and in Japan there isn't any sort of Christianity. Only 1% of the population is Christian in Japan. There's no Christianity isn't that dominant of a religion in Japan, yet the people are very moral. So in lots of other religions, and I've also studied many other different types of worldviews and religions, they also have a basic moral code, and their morals are basically similar to that of Christianity. What makes Christianity unique is the person of Jesus Christ, but that's another story that I could get to. But I think that's why I think the Supreme Court realized this sort of inconsistency, and that's why they had to say that this was a Christian violation of the Establishment Clause. And also, other Christian scholars or evangelical Christian scholars might have the same view as me, that no, prayer there shouldn't be any public schools that promote Christianity. And that's because whenever a public school or whenever a government institution says, okay, we're going to promote your religion, in some sense, they might misrepresent my sort of worldview or sort of a Christianity or any sort of worldview. But also they might force religion in a way so that so that a certain religion is not that attractive anymore. Because whenever, like Ravi Zacharias said, whenever religion is enforced upon another person, it doesn't become that attractive anymore. But so next we see some of the New Age violations of the Establishment Clause. The New Age movement has been enforcing schools to promote their own spiritual practices or religious beliefs through meditation or through their New Age authors or books. And this is really problematic. So many atheists, agnostics, Jews, Muslims, Christians, of all sorts, and even Buddhists and Hindus have been opposed to the New Age infiltration into the public school systems, declaring that they're a violation of the Establishment Clause. Of course, the agnostic, atheists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, and whatnot have the same reasons for being against meditation in public schools. However, the Hindus and Buddhists say that they are not representing Eastern spirituality in the most authentic way possible. Now, when I tried to look up the New Age violations of the Establishment Clause, there were many, but it was really hard to find a Supreme Court case. And actually, there was none. The closest one I was able to find was Malnak versus Yogi in 1979. And in this case, there was a group of people who were trying to promote New Age spiritual practices into the New Jersey public school system, and this only went up to the federal courts. And there were people from the World Executive Plan Council of the United Nations who were teachers of this class, and they said that they have to promote New Age meditation into the public school system. And Judge Adams had a very hard time defining what religion was, because this New Age spirituality or this New Age religion is not, in a sense, like other traditional religions. So basically, Judge Adams said that there's three definitions of a religion. That is comprehensiveness, ultimate question, and external signs. So ultimate question is basically that this whole belief system or this whole practice defines the meaning of life and death, man's role in the universe, or a proper moral code that defines right from wrong, and the person's destiny after their death. And also, comprehensiveness is just that this whole practice or this belief system is associated with a major traditional worldview in some way or another, and it forms into this sort of worldview. And external signs is just basically formal services, ceremonial services, existence of leaders, a structure in this organization, or efforts at propagating this belief, or observation of holidays and other rituals. So Judge Adams, through those definitions, was able to define this New Age spirituality as a religion, and therefore he was able to declare that the New Jersey public schools had violated the Establishment Clause. So the federal court, like the Supreme Court, was consistent in saying that spiritual or religious practice in public schools were a violation of the Establishment Clause. Sometimes the Supreme Court's been very bad in saying, hey, this is a violation of the Establishment Clause, especially in Santa Fe Independent School District versus Doe in 2000. And we see that these groups of students just wanted to pray before a football game, and most of these groups of students were evangelical Christians. And they said, okay, we're just going to do a quick prayer before we start the game. But one Catholic family and one Mormon family said, hey, Santa Fe Independent, this is a violation of the Establishment Clause. So this, of course, went up to the Supreme Court. But the school president and the school staff were saying, we never said or forced the students to do this prayer. So, but unfortunately, the Supreme Court said that the school, in fact, promoted this prayer and therefore was in violation of the Establishment Clause, but that was untrue. Now, if we go to a previous ruling by the Supreme Court made in Good News Club versus Milford School District in 2001, the Supreme Court said that any student or any person could perform their own religious activities on the public school grounds as long as it was not being promoted by the public school staff the public school staff. So therefore, the Supreme Court misruled or misjudged in this case. So how can we prevent religion from being, or from public schools imposing religions? So I think that it starts with the individual person, of being considerate about another person's world views, not feeling insecure about their own faith, and also not being upset by the lack of people converting to their own faith or their own views, and just to speak honestly and dialogue honestly with people of other worldviews. And I think that if we could do that as individuals, the Supreme Court doesn't have to say to tell public schools or to rule against public schools and promoting religion. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.